introduction, and thank you for having me here. Actually, my presentation will be on a pilot project in Egypt for sustainable new urban communities, which is called PLEV, which stands for Productive, Low-Cost, Environmentally Friendly Village. We usually talk about environmentally friendly, we talk about resilience, we talk about ecosystems and eco-design, but actually the people, especially in Egypt, in a need to see a pilot on the ground, a pilot that can apply all these concepts and definitions and criteria to be evaluated and to be replicated and to be show the people that these concepts are applicable and it could really change the reality that we are living and solve the challenges and problems that we are facing. And these are the three questions that should be answered by the end of this session. I will not read them because you have it in the flyer, but my presentation will be focused on three issues. Before talking about this pilot project, I will talk briefly about social and ecological challenges in Egypt, and then I will present the concept of PLEV. And I really appreciate what was introduced, talking about the holistic and the interdisciplinary approach, because we're really in need for such interdisciplinary approach and the need for such a pilot on the ground. The challenges. Actually, why we thought about this project, because we have lots of challenges, but the main challenges from our point of view in HPRC was the unemployment, because the current rate of unemployment is somewhere between 10 to 40%, with much higher rate amount youth. And for that we thought that we really need productive community. And then we have the housing and slum areas. And the problem that we don't have really a problem of housing, but we have a shortage of affordable housing. Because we have lots of vacant housing, but it's not in the affordability of the people, and especially for the youth. For that, we call for low-cost buildings and low-cost infrastructure. And the third challenge actually the deterioration of environment, especially in energy and water and air pollution. And for that we called for environmentally friendly buildings and environmentally friendly community. And from here we came with the idea of the project, which is productive, low-cost, environmentally friendly village. The purpose of the project was to create an integrated sustainable village model to have a sustainable community initiated, developed and managed actually by its youth residents through a technical expertise from HPRC, the Housing and Building National Research Center, and actually national and international expert, and through working in a teamwork with civil societies, donors, and interested individual governmental organizations and institutions. And the overall actual project is not just to introduce a model, but to introduce a methodology, how to go out from this Nile Valley to any new community in the desert. So this is the main idea, is to introduce the methodology and to apply this methodology in a model that can be evaluated and replicated, especially in the 400 new communities, which is Qura al-Zahir Sahrawi, but the villages in the remote desert areas, but also in any other new urban communities in the desert. So we are trying to do a model and then to show it and to transfer it to other areas. And this was the main idea of the project. The conceptual framework actually is to work on the concept of sustainable community in 3 main pillars. Because we talked about the interdisciplinary approach. It's not the idea just to build green buildings and sustainable infrastructure, but also to focus on the green economy, because we have a problem of the 22 new cities in Egypt and many of the new communities that the people, we build just buildings and the people have no jobs. So the people coming into the main cities, especially in Cairo and the other main cities, to work and to use the services, which is actually the main problem. So the green economy, focusing on the organic agriculture, renewable energy, green technology, and green industry, it's one of the main pillars of this project. And then the green built environment, which actually the main item, which is the green infrastructure, green urban planning, green buildings, and green mobility. And many of the people, when we present this concept, said everything is green, and this is actually very theoretical concept. But the idea is how to transform this theoretical ideas to something that the people can see it and can live it. And then the other main pillar is the green living, and we are talking about the green management, how this project will be managed through its residents from youth. And we have a working group working on the sustainable community management and also the green services, especially health, education, and culture. And all of this pilot will be evaluated with our national rating system. I don't know you know about this or no, but we have a national rating system which is equivalent to LEED and PRIAM and DGMP, the green certificate, German certificate system, which is called Green Pyramid Rating System. We already finished the first version for new construction, and it's available on our website, on HPRC website for new construction, and we are finalizing now the version for the sustainable community, which is equivalent for DGMB for communities, our LEED for neighborhood, or PRIAM for community. So we have already a criteria for all the main issues of the sustainable community, which is water, energy, sustainable urban planning and design, sustainable site and the ecology, management and outdoor environmental quality. We try to work hard to put all the criteria, which is suit the Egyptian conditions and taking into consideration our challenges and our culture. So all of this model will be evaluated, and we took into consideration from the beginning the criteria of this rating system. So where is this project actually? Because we are not dreaming, we are talking about reality. This project in El Fayoum governorate, which is 130 kilometers south west Cairo, and for the people who don't know, that governorate of Fayoum, 80% of it is actually protected area, and it's the second poorest governorate in Egypt, which is actually a challenge. And this is the location of the site, and this is the yellow site. This is the site which were allocated from the governorate to the project, which is 2,000 acres. And the number of residential units we are working on is 5,000 units, and we are targeting 25,000 inhabitants. And when it will be replicated, hopefully, and evaluated, it will be cover the 400 remote villages. Who are the partners? Actually, the idea that maybe in the past that each organization was working like in isolated islands. But we tried in this project to see all the stakeholders who should be involved in the project. So HPRC, the Housing and Building National Research Center, has started with the MOU or cooperation cooperation protocol with the government of Fayoum, and then with the Ministry of Local Development through cooperation protocol as well, and Ministry of Environment, and with the Desert National Research Center, and with other individual expertise from different universities in Egypt, and also volunteers from the youth. And actually, these youth, they were the engine for this project, because without this youth and without the pushing from them, we were not able to have such a land, especially after the revolution, and you know the problem of having land after the revolution. And recently, 2 months ago, we signed the MOU with TU Berlin to work together on 15 working packages. I will explain it later. And we are welcoming actually any governmental and institutional organization, local and international, to work on the project. The main idea when we have started the project 1 year ago is to learn from the people and reflect the lessons of the past on the future, taking on consideration the challenges of the present. Because for me it was, despite Fayoum is really near from Cairo, but I rediscovered Fayoum when we have started to work on the project. We have started from what the people have in Fayoum. Because many of you, I don't know, but many of the people do know that Fayoum has very special handicrafts, but the people very poor, despite they have very unique skills. And here, this is actually one of the villages, Dessia village, because we have started not only working on the site, what we have, but we started to make survey in the different villages around the site and to see what are actually the needs of the people, what they want to do, what the skills, what they dream, what are their dreams. And these are the Dessia village, and they working on carpets, and they have very unique skills, but actually it's about to disappear because the people has very low income and they have no market to market their products. And this is Bianco, and this Bianco village, they are working on the palm reeds products. They have very unique furniture and products from the palm reeds, as you see here. And actually this furniture was one of the eco-hotels that we used to stay on when we are in our surveys. And here you see that the people actually adapt to the nature, to the climate, and he uses this shading for the car, and it's rare to find the car in the villages of Fayoum. And the guys here are working on the palm reeds to prepare it for such products. And it was for me actually very interesting to see this productive streets. In Fayoum, that you see that from the beginning of the street in one of this Bianco village till the end of the streets, the ladies are sitting and working on such palm reeds carpets and such products from the palm reeds. And it will be surprising for me that the daily income for such for each lady is 5 Egyptian pounds, which is less than $1 per day, despite they have very interesting skills which can be can build on and to find a market for them and to build on these small businesses. And this is one of the successful model around the site, which is Tunis village. Maybe it's the most common or famous village because there is a Switzerland woman called Evelyn. She has started there to build the skills of the ladies and to market these products from pottery all over the world, and then make exhibition in Switzerland and in France, and also make some exhibitions in Fayoum and invite touristic people from outside. So this model was really one of the successful models, and the people didn't complain about the market against the other people in the other villages who really have very good skills in handcraft, but they don't have a market and they don't have actually a plan to be developed. And also we try to see what are the main features of the building in Fayoum, and I think tomorrow you will go in depth on the earth architecture and the other techniques that they are using in other places in Egypt, and we try from this to build on what kind of type of construction that we should take in consideration, and we should focus, and we should try to train the people and to use it in the project. And the main idea that, as I told you, that 80% of the government is a protected area, which should be taken on consideration on the planning. And they have actually also good examples for, they have a project, funded project called Free Energy, and they are using the biogas, and it was successful to some extent, and we try to see this successful model. At the same time, we try to see what is the challenges especially for the housing projects around the site. And it was really very disappointing to see such a project, which is called 1,000 houses for farmers, Alf Maskan Rifi, and we see such models. It's 1,000 units and it's empty, because the Ministry of Housing built this on 36 meter squares, and the people don't accept to live in such units because they didn't understand what the needs of the people, what are the needs of the people, how they live, what are the daily activity. They used to have such big court and to have such daily activity, and the problem that the Ministry of Housing, they linked in the past between the area of the building and the coast. Despite we can build a building with 100 square meter, and to be cheaper than to build such a building with 36 meter square. So it depends on the type of construction that should be from the local materials and using the local people to build. And actually it's one of the main challenges for that, because we should take that into consideration. We will not be able to destroy it, and it's very neat from the side how we will deal with this. And the other challenge as well, that this new village called Karun, which is one of the new remote villages, the desert, Qaryah Sahrawi, which is actually, you can find that they build everything. They build all the units and it's empty because there is no services and there is no jobs for the people. So what the people will do? We just build building to say that already we have 1,000 units, we have 1,100 units, we have whatever, and we should take that into consideration in the jobs that we should create for the plant model and for the villages and the units around us. So actually what achieved now, we try to focus on the environmental studies, green economy studies, social studies, planning criteria, zoning and land use budget. But because of the limitation of the time, actually we have started with the climatic analysis. And this is one of the sometimes issues that really affect. It's not sometimes, it's always one of the base for the planning, for environmental planning, that should be addressed carefully, and we tried to address this. And the plague zones, we have 3 zones. The first zone is the green techno center hub, because we thought that Egypt has 3 main problems, which is the energy and the water and the food. And we thought that this village should should have 3 techno center hub, one for the renewable energy and one for the aqua techno center, which is focusing on the water, and one for the agro techno center, which is focusing on the organic farms and fish farms. And we are working with the research desert on this. And then we have the zone number 2, which is the productive zone. And this is the main zone to have really opportunities for the people to work on, and it was not easy to work on the green economy model because it really was new for us and for such a project. So we have started also to make a survey what kind of projects that the people really want to do, and what is the local materials, what the local resources. Some investors in the past have introduced really some projects, but didn't establish. So we try to see what they have and what is what coming from the studies, and we are working on the detail for that. And then the knowledge part, which is consists of eco-learning training center and ecotourism center, and what we call the life center, which is sustainable development community center. And then the main issue, which is actually was in the past, this is the issue, and we forget about all the other zones, which is a sustainable residential neighborhood, and we have 20 neighborhoods. One of them will be self-sufficient, because we want to try that we cannot generalize that all the neighborhood will be self-sufficient in water and energy, because it's really a new model, and we have to take in consideration that the know-how maybe will be a problem in the beginning. Then we have the other 19 neighborhoods will be energy efficient and water efficient, and have all the features related to the green buildings and the green urban planning, and also the services. This is actually the concepts briefly, and because we talked about the interdisciplinary interdisciplinary approach, we have actually 15 work packages here, starting from the social, the first work packages, which is the social research and urban sociology, and then the economy, which is the green economy and the green businesses, and then the sustainable urban planning and design, 2 work packages, urban design and transport and mobility, and then the ecosystems and infrastructure. And we have here 4 work packages: water resources and water management. We have waste management, renewable energy and building services, and also we have the ICT. And then we have the landscape architecture. We have 2 work packages: the urban landscape design and urban agriculture. Then we have the sustainable buildings, which focusing on the green design and the green construction systems. And then one of the most important work packages, which is the capacity development and the vocational training, because we want to create jobs for the people. So we have to train them on some of the construction that we will work on, and one of the main construction that we will use, which is the air construction. And we have a successful pilot inside the venue of HBRC in Tahrir Square. We built it by ourselves, by unskilled labor, and we already tested it. And then the monitoring and evaluation, because we want to replicate and evaluate this model to be replicated in Egypt. I will conclude my presentation because I know it's 20 minutes finished. That the desired outcome to see such a model in the ground, and focusing on the green living and the green economy and green built environment, taking on consideration all these features. And it's really a challenge, but we have detailed study right now for each one of the work packages, and we will work with Chair Berlin in some of these work packages to be achieved actually on the ground, because the people really very interactive with us, and really want to work with us from the beginning. And this is the methodology approach that we have. What we call it, bottom-up scenarios to simulation, and to evaluate and update the scenarios and come back again to the ground. I want to tell you that without the people and without the youth, we will not be able to achieve anything. We will not be able to have the land. We will not be able to work on this, on the detailed studies. We just present the concept, and without the people of Fayoum themselves, because they have the passion to see something on the ground. In the beginning, they were refusing us because they said, each time you come to ask for the land, not they are not talking about us, but they are talking about the people from the ministry, from the other ministries in general. But after time, once and twice and third, they have convinced, and we started to talk with them that we really want to create a sustainable life, and we have started to explain in a very simple way what does it mean sustainable, and the main problem for them was the job opportunities. So when they have started to feel that they really will have opportunities for work, they were very supportive for the project, and we are still now in the conceptual planning, and thank you very much for your patience and for giving me the opportunity to present the project.
Thank you very much, Dr. Farouh, for your very interesting contribution, and I'm quite sure that your model that is going to supply the methodology to be repeated doesn't suffer the same fate as the other two things that you have shown that have been tried, and it shows that urban planning is more than just building houses and building streets. There is time for discussion, and I'm sure that your papers that you have run through quite quickly right now will be in the documentation, so there will be food for a further study as well. I have a first question right there.
Thank you, Dr. Farouh. My name is Kuril. I'm one of the IUSD advisory board. As usual, this thing is very unreliable. I hope I'm not as unreliable.
I say only half. Should I use it? Should I not use it? I say only half jokingly, but it's interesting that Professor Schmidt reminded us of the value of going back to the origin of words. Sustainability comes from forestry, resilience comes from psychology, and so on.
Because you cannot hear it very well here.
Okay.
Hello? Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me, Professor Schmidt?
Yeah.
Great, good. I was thanking you, Professor Schmidt, for reminding us of the origin of words and what they mean, because it's important to go back to the forest, sustainability coming from forestry, resilience coming from psychology. But it's quite, I find it ironic that when you talk about communities in the desert, you're actually using the word green. Green economy, green buildings, and so on and so forth. And I only half jokingly, but half seriously, fairly seriously. But I think you should think about changing a paradigm which is very, very much rooted in cultural roots in Europe and the US, where greenery is the symbol of nature. When you're working in a desert environment, I would say that yellow is a much better term. I mean, all the pictures you showed us had yellow in it. Even the ceramics were yellow. People were not, but everything else was yellow. The reeds, the walls, the floors, everything. So honestly, but I think, as the minister said this morning, a new paradigm is needed for areas where rain doesn't exist. There's no issue of thinking even about water. There's only one main source of water, which is the Nile, and possibly sort of deep water wells. And therefore we need a new paradigm. So it's not for you to do it, but it is a general challenge for the MENA region. That was my first point. Sorry.
Shall I reply to the first point? Or, sure. Actually, I disagree, because when we put the green, actually, you know that it's related to the tree, how the tree is functional, and how it's a close cycle to the nature. So it's a kind of metaphor more than we are talking about the green as a color. And this is what we are trying to convince the people, that green is more than a color. It's not just that some plants around, but it's a way of thinking. So if we will change it to be yellow in the desert and in and the sea will be blue, it means that actually I'm believing in the concept more than the color. So,
okay, we agree to disagree, that's fine. So you're not going to take the challenge, fine. The other point, which is, I've used to take my students to Egypt for years, a long time ago, and we looked at the new communities, of which there were 17, if I remember correctly, around Cairo. The whole point was to decentralize or decongest Cairo. Nobody really knows how much it cost, places like Sadat City and 6th of October and all the ones that you all know about. But the more reliable estimate that I've seen was they cost about $8 billion US, which is probably a conservative estimate. A lot of it coming from USA. Now, creating new communities and therefore trying to do what you're doing in a much more modest way than the new communities that the big project that launched is a big challenge. But you didn't tell us how much it's going to cost and who's going to fund it. And what is the timeline that you have in mind? And why do you think this would succeed where all the other countless schemes that have been tried in Egypt have failed? Particularly in the face of the fact that in the face of lack of opportunities for the young, people migrate to cities. And cities, let's face it, whether we like them or not, give them much greater opportunities than small villages. Sadly.
Okay. So your question actually is lots of questions in one question.
First,
okay.
You can answer it.
Firstly, is the funding and how does it cost? Which is actually the main question that everywhere we are talking about the plan is the people are asking how much does it cost? And how it will be funded. Actually, the funds, to be very honest, that we are planning to have 3 workshops as soon as we finalize the first phase of the planning. The first workshop will be with the donors, to invite all the donors, and actually the youth are working. They make a survey of all the donors, the 23 donors in Egypt, and each donor which funds that can go to which area. And then another workshop with the private sector and the people who are interested to invest in such a project. And the main idea with the government, actually, you know that, and we are talking now with the Minister of Local Development and the Minister of Housing that they have already fund for 1 million unit housing unit. And they estimated that the unit, the past minister talked about the unit, will cost 160,000 for the youth, which is actually expensive for the youth. And we are talking about the unit from the earth construction, for example. It's actually cost, and it's not a secret, that we built it on 100 meters square, and it cost us about something between $60,000 to $70, which means 60,000 Egyptian pound, which means $10,000. This is regarding the funding, but for the project right now and for the preparation phase and for the planning and all these studies, in the beginning, the last year, we were working completely voluntarily with the youth, with the expert, with the people from the different places. It was completely voluntary, and we were actually passionate to work in the beginning as volunteers for such a concept. After that, we already applied for some proposals, and it was succeeded with SDF and all of these issues. This is regarding the working and the studies and all these issues. Regarding the implementation, I told you till now that the government will take part, the people who will live in this village will take part, and the people who are working on the fundraising, they are preparing a detailed budget for that. But actually, it's very difficult to tell you now the number. I can tell you the number for the pilot, which we will build soon, which is the pilot will be some residential unit, the life center with roads and some sustainable infrastructure, and it costs about $1 million, not more than that, because we just want to test the small pilot of the pilot. Regarding, you asked about the funding and you asked about the time plan, and the time plan for this village is 3 years, and this is actually, it's not a challenge, but it's realistic time plan from all the group we thought, and we put phases from phase number 1 till phase to see the first neighborhoods with the infrastructure and part from the
sustainable business and green business zone. The last question was about, you asked about the funding, you asked about the time plan.
Why would you succeed?
Why will we succeed? Because, in my opinion, for the first time, you see that the people are involving in the project from stage number 0. And at the same time, I can tell you, if the people worked for 1 year, completely volunteers, because they believing in the idea, I think there is a big opportunity to succeed. And there is no guarantee to succeed unless there is a political will, and also a will from the people in Fayoum, and the expertise, and this multidisciplinary approach still going on. But there is challenge everywhere and in every stage.
I have a couple more questions, and we are actually running short on time now, so quickly 1, 2, 3 on the right-hand side. Thank you for your question, and thank you for the answer that you have given.
Thanks to Hend for the presentation. I can do second comment fully about green. I know that you might not have not meant green in the term of color, but maybe in the term of ideology. But that reminds me in a research project that we were trying to establish with the institute in Spain, and suddenly they found that their mandate only to work in forests, and they cannot work with us because we don't have forests in Egypt. Later on, they found a way of cooperating with us because the definition of forest in their mandate was everything that is not water, not urban, not agriculture. So by doing that, suddenly the desert became our own forest. So we can work. That's maybe something about the yellow color. I would like to comment on something that's very nice, and to see how detailed you went into your work packages. And from my view, to cover these packages, the 15 packages, would take more than 3 years maybe. But I'm more worried not about covering the packages. I'm more worried about how you integrate that, how these 15 work packages are really coordinated and really contributing to an integrated product that really takes into account not at the end. You know, designers are very famous for doing work packages of analysis forever, and then they have their own preconception from the beginning. You know, you do that just to fulfill the requirement of doing the what's so-called research. But we're here trying to make sure that this research and this analysis is actually the basis for whatever output will come, and that will never be ensured unless there is really a coordination plan and a workflow, how these packages are feeding each other and how they are really shaping the final product. And I wonder if this was already thought of, and if you can give us a brief on how to do that. Thank you.
Okay, good. Let's tell you that this work package, in the beginning we have these work packages, but after working with TU Berlin, they already have this work package in a similar project, not that similar actually, but they have experience in the young cities in Iran. So we try to learn from their lesson, from their experience, despite it has its negative, and despite it didn't achieve it, still just concepts on the paper, and it didn't see the reality anymore. We know that, but the idea is this coordination plan. Actually, it's. I will tell you, in the beginning, it was very difficult to coordinate with the different ministries. It was very tough. But we succeeded with this coordination plan. In the work packages, we have this, I don't have with me right now, how the work packages will feed each other, but we worked and we have very nice chart with all these arrows and how each work package will feed. But I can't say that how we will guarantee it. Depends on the management and how the coordination will be run, and we are in the process. Until now, we are succeeding. Till now.
So it's going to be an interesting thing to follow up.
Yeah,
in the future. I think we'll have a brief statement, and then we have, I think, 1 or 2 more on the other side.
question in addition to Mohammed's questions. You said you are working now on this research about 10 years, I think, and you are now starting to implement the project. Don't you think that it makes sense that you start in a small action area with the first buildings and to see how it is working, how your green ideas are really going for the people's vision of living, just in remembering what was going on in Gulna, when they made all these buildings in a whole project and nobody wants to live there anymore, because it was an idea as well from GOPP and they're working on it. But I think it's very important to start with the first action area and to see how things are going, and then you can learn out of it to improve more things.
And this is what I said, that the action area, which as I mentioned, that's the fund of $1 million. We are talking about action areas with 10 acres and with different prototype of the residential, and also with the different eco sanitations and renewable energy and all of this. And this is actually the action area that we are working on right now. We will start with this 10 acres to see that, and I said that this is a pilot of the pilot. And this is completely right, because we cannot work on this 2,000 acres like that.
Okay, thank you. Two more questions. Yes. I think we should cut off.
Yeah, just a small question, construction-wise. Are you just trying earth construction? And is it just a traditional earth construction, or are you trying different new and modernized methods of earth construction?
Actually, we have a project in HPRC called Stabilized Earth and the Modern Earth Sustainable Architecture and the Modern Techniques of Stabilized Earth. And we worked with two types of construction for Earth. We worked with the compressed stabilized earth block, and we have this unit right now. And we worked with rammed earth. But actually the rammed earth was not that successful because of the curing issues. Right now we are working on a code, the standard for the stabilized earth construction in Egypt. So we are very aware that to use the modern techniques and to put a standard for such modern techniques, and we are working on the soil identification and the mixture and all of these issues, and to test all the process starting from the soil identification, then the production of the blocks till the construction system with all its techniques. And we have MOU with Orbital Earth Institute in India because they have similar projects. So we have started with them. Then now we are completely working with ourselves with these techniques.
Okay, I would say one more question, and then we have 1 full hour of the possibility of questions and answers after the coffee break and the first day conclusions. There is 1 full hour where all the speakers of the day will be sitting up here and can be addressed. So I guess because Professor Stockman has now quickly made up to replace Dr. Karoumi, who could not come, and it would be unpolite for her now not to be able to speak at all. So I would say 1 question, 1 answer, and then later on after the coffee break we have a chance to pick up again with the very interesting discussions that you are having on a pilot project here in Egypt. Please.
Okay, considering the tryout issue, I was wondering, you showed us some of the failed prototypes, like the prototype. Will it be more like material efficient and maybe walk on the safe side to try out some of the packages first on some like that, like job provision, for example, or green infrastructure or something, before trying it out on a bigger scale somewhere else?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
Okay.
You talked about the project, the housing project, which is already exists around the site.
Yeah, you told us there was problems with. You told us there was problems with job opportunities and services. So will it be more like even material efficient, or a walk on the safe side to try out some of the packages there first, and then if they fail or if they succeed, to try them out on a bigger scale on a virgin land after that?
Yeah, you are. I understood that you are encouraging us to work on the work practices of the green economy. probably to go to a bigger scale. This is what I'm...
With the existing, already built environment over there.
Actually, there is a problem with the existing building that the people don't accept it. So we are trying now to redesign it to see how we will integrate it in the project in a unique way. And we are discussing this with the people because it's already sold. So the people already own this units, but they don't want to live in it. So we are trying to work on the people in a series of workshops to see how we can reuse these units, not for the residential because they don't accept it as a residential unit, but for some commercial and some job opportunities, for some opportunities for job and economical issues. So it's this is one of the main issues that we are taking in consideration.
Let's have one question. Can we get one more question? How do you make sure that it doesn't turn to be like a theme park? Because one of the examples you gave, which is like Nesbitt Waste, I went there many times and I felt like it's more like a theme park. You go inside the village and you look at the villagers who haven't got a lot of benefit from the local economic revitalization of this village. And most of the people who build these mud houses overlooking the lake are from outside. So how much you can save this project from becoming a theme park where local crafts are being done by the locals and people are coming inside and wandering around to see these villagers doing that?
Yeah, it's really, I completely agree. And this is for that we put the work package of social urban planning and social studies. Because I totally agree that Tunis has become like the people go and see and just a show model. And this is most of the green or sustainable projects in the Arab countries, even Masdar. It's still just the people go and to see and okay, it's nice and to go after that, but there is no replication. So the idea is how to make it livable. And the people feel that this is really a community that they want to live in, and it's their community, it's their village, and to evaluate it to be replicated, not just to be a showcase or whatever.
Okay, so now the gentleman had called for a question a long time, so he may have the last question now, and then we just go for a coffee break later than planned.
And actually, I hope that not all the answers how to be sure, because there is I'm not sure, but we are trying to do our best to have a successful model.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hend, for your presentation. I'm Mohammed Asad from Ain Shams University. I'm a little bit concerned about the awareness plans. Unfortunately to say that we as Egyptians practice dealing with water consumption and energy consumption and even waste management, solid waste management. We really deal with it with some carelessness. So, is there any awareness plans towards the people of Fayoum to know more about green practices? Because I feel that we have a very big problem here in Egypt, especially on a household level, that we consume, household level consumes between 40 to 50% of Egyptian energy, especially electricity. And unfortunately, we don't have very strict measurements or practices realizing reduction of energy or water consumption or even waste management. Unfortunately, we're going downwards, especially with waste management. We were better in the first 2002. Now we're getting worse in this sense. So, is there any awareness plans for this project? Because if we're going to build for Egyptians such projects, are they aware about how to live in these places and how to adapt to it, even though you have a social survey and social study for them and to how to adapt to it? But are they going to realize how to deal with energy and water and waste management? Thank you.
Let's tell you that the beginning of this project actually was from the youth, when some people, youth came to HPRC to demonstrate that they thought they want to have a housing unit. And we have started to talk with them that, okay, it's not the idea to have a housing unit, it's the idea to have house and work and to have a life. So we have started to talk with them about the project, and when they are from different backgrounds, from art, from law, and different backgrounds, and they were not able to understand what does it mean sustainable value, what does it mean resilience, what does it mean all of this. So we have started with training, orientation training for them about all of this, especially for the module of energy and water, till they reached some level to help us in the gathering material and data for the project and to be part of this project. And you will see in the package number 15, it's capacity development, vocational training, and awareness raising, because it's one of the important. It's very new model for the people in Fayoum. They don't care about water efficiency and energy efficiency and all of these issues, and you know that they have a very serious problem in the water. And my first experience was when we are trying to find a site that in a village near the site, that the people don't have access to water. They buy the water, and one of the guys was really very upset because he's buying 20 liters of water with 2 Egyptian pounds, which is less than $50. And they are complaining not because of the quality of water and they don't have the access to water, but because they're paying money for the water. So it's really one of the most important issues: the capacity development, the awareness, and the training. So, let me just finish with one thing, that each of this work package we have a plan, and because of the limitation of the time I was not able to introduce, because we started to introduce proposals for donors and for each so we will not be able to just give them a table like that. But each work package have subtasks and activities that will be achieved, and we already have, so maybe in one of this event we can present in details. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation, and we certainly wish you and your It's my pleasure now to introduce Professor Dr. Antje Stockmann of the University of Stuttgart. She is a professor at the department where the students have just spent 2 semesters. She also is in private practice with an office in Hamburg, Germany. The office has just won a competition, design competition, on how to react with islets in the North Sea towards rising sea levels. So you see she's really upfront. She had worked before in private offices in landscape architecture in Germany and abroad, mainly in China. And just recently she has done research work on a practical basis in Chile. I think she's going to refer briefly on that project as well. So welcome, Professor Antje Stockmann.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Actually, all our students already know a lot about the things that I will talk about today, but I try to put some new projects that I actually didn't show you in my lectures yet, also to have something new for you. But I think the philosophy, the basic philosophy, is something that you are quite used to at least. And I'm really grateful, Hend, for you to introduce this comprehensive perspective of the topic of ecosystem design, what we also call the module, not to only call it landscape planning, because I fully agree with Julio that the topic of only relating landscape to greenery, it's very limiting in terms of the profession. And being a landscape architect, which has the word landscape even in the name of the profession, it's really quite a challenge to deal with that. Because when people think about landscape, when I think about urban landscape, this kind of green concept, this is really what they have in their minds. And green is the physical green of really having lawns, having trees, having flowers, needing to sustain those. And these images are projected not only on the scale of a garden, but even on the scale of a city. Look at New Cairo, look at what's happening there. I was really shocked when Mohammed took me there the first time to realize what amounts of greening the desert on that kind of scale. And this is why I was also thinking it's not a matter of only informal developments to say this is where we are wasting the resources, but it's really on this scale of planning, of large-scale planning in the whole world, where we see these kind of images of just greening the whole city, putting these renderings that pretend to be green. And I worked as a landscape architect. After I graduated, I was not prepared for these challenges. In Germany, it's quite easy to talk about green and talk about lawns and water because we do have these resources. But then coming to China, being exposed to the challenges of people wanting this kind of standard, like in New Cairo, wanting to have these kind of communities around-side lakes, around-side golf courses, around-side lawns, and then realizing as a landscape architect, needing to accommodate for these needs, doing all these designs of nice plazas, doing gardens, promenades along water, and then coming to these places, which was for me the experience in China, in Beijing, which is actually also quite dry, with the groundwater table sinking every year by 1 meter, which I didn't know at that time when I was doing the design of the green community, but then walking to the river and realizing there's no more water left, because everything is coming from the reservoirs in the mountain, going to the city, and 2/3 of it not even used for drinking, even although there are many people who don't even have any water for drinking, but used for greening the city in terms of really creating physical green, which is a really big thing for landscape architects, because this is the expectation, even when you hear the word landscape, and you're thinking of these kind of green paradises, but what you're creating is a landscape that's becoming deserts, that's also losing the resilience of the ecological basis of the city. And what you also get, because of this very narrow-minded notion, is that looking at different natural environments, working in South China or in Asia where it's really wet, and then working in the desert, we are now working in Lima, where there's no greenery at all because it's desert, but when you come to the city, every urban landscape just looks the same. And some colleagues, they have done some research that it's even a very limited number of plants that are being introduced to the city to create these images that are the same everywhere in the world. It's this global landscape, and if you look at these pictures, you cannot even distinguish where are these cities. They all look the same. They all have the same architecture. They all have the same kind of greening, which of course creates a lot of burden to the environment. And these results of this kind of approach to thinking of a green urban landscapes, they are usually thought as a field of, this is an engineering problem. Now we need to put a lot of money into very expensive technologies to solve these things. And it's not seen as a job that's related to urban planning or landscape architecture. And we've heard this number several times this morning. We've also discussed about climate change and the challenges this poses to the resilience of cities, of the meeting the needs of people, wanting, of course, it's understandable, a green and healthy environment, all wanting to go to the water, but we are 7 million. We are in a world where the sea level is rising. We are in a world where we cannot deny climate change anymore, and we need to find ways to deal with these challenges. So what we are also discussing in the course of IUSD, and I just want to show you a few examples now, how also from the perspective of ecosystem design and landscape planning, we can find responses to the needs of these people by also thinking of urban landscapes and landscapes in general in a new way, not only thinking of them as something that's green and nice and beautiful, and we want to bring it back to our cities to compensate for the loss of what we had before. And I want to show you 3 projects that also show kind of change of mind from the traditional concept of landscaping, of greening the city, because this usually involves to protect yourself from the flood, to build flood defenses, to pollute the water in order to bring in clean drinking water to then irrigate the greenery, to some other approaches that incorporate actually the ecosystem perspective and the infrastructure perspective into the design of also beautiful and nice landscapes. And as Mr. Schmidt just mentioned, in our office we were involved in a competition recently which was about the future of our coast in Germany, which has the same challenges, of course, like also in Alexandria, like the coast of Egypt, because of the sea level rise, we are tending to build these hard structures. We saw what's happening in Alexandria. This is what's happening in Hamburg, where I live, which is a German big city on the coast. And you see this hotel is called the View of the River Elbe. But because of the level of the River Elbe rising, they are building these walls, which actually then becomes blocking the view, and nobody ever gets the view of the water again. So it's this typical kind of contradiction that we are facing. To build these hard structures, and we need to deal, of course, with these challenges. And in the German coast, we have a lot of islands. We just heard that it's now thought of introducing artificial island to create a buffer, which is what we have from the natural environment already in Germany, because this Wadden Sea and these islands are actually a natural buffer which protects our coast. But of course, this buffer is also endangered because of the rising sea level and the forces getting stronger. And we have these typical settlements that are on wharfs that they created from soil. And the buildings are built on higher ground. And when the flood is coming, the strong surge, these small islands, they get covered with the water. And the good thing about that is this water brings the sediments, which actually makes these islands rise together with the sea, because every time they are heightened from the natural sedimentation process. But of course, these artificial mounds, they are not heightened naturally, but it's the people who need to heighten them. And now with the sea level rising faster, and the people already living on these mounds, how could we think of a strategy to also increase the height of these mounds, but not for people to move altogether, but to see it as a dynamic process that we need to face. And so we thought on different scales, and it's a very interdisciplinary topic, to work with marine ecologists to understand about the currents of the sea, to understand about the sedimentation and movement of the sand in the sea, and how to use that. There are a lot of examples in the Netherlands. They're called sand motor, something like that, to build dunes, to build natural ecosystems that enable the coast to become resilient, and combine that on the level of engineering and on the level of architecture with an approach to buildings that can actually also rise in height. So these engineers, they invented these hydraulic structures to put the houses on pillars where you could add several centimeters to make them able to grow in the future, and to help the people to resettle from the lower parts of this building mound, which would become for the use of the summer for tourism, which could then be flooded in the winter. So also we thought about different types of new architecture, which would be for the permanent houses that would be higher on these new mounds that are added to the old mounds, and with the old buildings to have some protection, which is like the sealing of the windows in case of an emergency, in the churches to have the furniture put on another level if there is a flood, that these things can be secured. And so we also do have these discussions about adapting the coast to the climate in Germany, and I think it really needs quite large teams for that, because you're working on the scale of understanding the whole marine ecosystems, to engineering approaches, to architecture, and to integrate that into an ecosystem design idea. And in the course in Stuttgart, we talked a lot about the capacity of natural ecosystems to actually purify water, which is naturally happening in streams, but because we are overburdening our rivers, they have really become like open sewer systems. And I showed some examples from China, but most examples are from wet environments. And I just found recently an example which I think is really great, because it's from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and it works with the river, which has an ecosystem like you see here. It's a wadi. It has a very strong fluctuation in water level, which also often becomes dry, but it has some natural vegetation due to the groundwater that actually remains within these areas, even if it's dry. And it's in a typical situation where this has become just like a sewage ditch, and people, because it looks like it's not designed, people just because it's already also dirty. People throw their rubbish inside, so it's nothing that people want to go to visit, to be close to, and it becomes the backside of the cities and the urban environment. And what happened here with this project was to link a project for a new sewage treatment plant, which also doesn't clean the water to the full cleaning capacity, with a treatment system that then already becomes part of the park. So you can see this is a water treatment plant, but it's already designed to incorporate the experience of people of being able to understand the process of the cleaning of the water, which means that you need to move the water, you need to aerate the water to bring in some oxygen to enable the cleaning capacity. And this is also part of the treatment process to make the water go in lines, not to make it just disappear from the city as fast as possible, but to make it move and circle, and people watching this process with also a design which incorporates the dry character of the landscape. Because usually people think of river parks as something that needs to be green also, because it's a river and they want a green landscape. But here they really designed it in a way with this kind of dry design where people also can access the water very easily. And because of the inflow of this water treatment, there is some little water all year round, which from the point of design, then this whole area can be flooded in that time of the year when the wadi needs to carry a lot of water out of the city. So here you can see in the low water, people can go inside, they can understand to get close to the water again and understand about the need of the good water quality. And in the flood time, all of this gets flooded even up to the stairs. So the dike themselves also become landscape features because they are the what also in the low water time makes the people move inside this landscape. And the last example that I wanted to show, because I didn't make it in Stuttgart, to still show you what we did in Lima, and some of you contributed to this project that we did as part of the Megacity Research Initiative. Also Rudolf Schäfer from TU Berlin, he's working in Tehran, I think, and we are working in Lima. Here it's the same thing about the green landscape, because on the one side of the hill you see where the rich people live. This is where a lot of the drinking water is put into greening the landscape, into having pools. And just on the other side you see the settlements that don't even have any drinking water, where the same lorries come and provide the drinking water to the people. That is very, very expensive. And how to deal with these inequalities, how to also deal with the water management, because at the moment there are a lot of different systems in the city, but they are planning to put a water treatment plant down at the ocean, which would then have all the clean wastewater just disappear into the ocean and not making use of the grey water and the recycled water anymore. And there were different scenarios produced, taking into account different factors. And Manal and Insaf, they did these illustrations for these different scenarios that also explain about the systems, to also visualize that to the people, how the city actually functions in terms of the water cycle, in terms of the water management, because this is something that's so abstract that people tend to not really understand what you are talking about. And what we have been trying to do is to link the strategies from a large scale, which is actually the metropolitan scale and even the catchment scale of the water from Lima, which comes from the glaciers in the mountains, to a pilot project that also we wanted to put on the ground to explain what we are talking about, also something concrete measures, what could that be? And it's not that easy to actually find a site for a pilot project, and also to identify what could the pilot project be in this case, and also how to initiate and start it. And we worked with the students on a watershed of a river that has the strongest urban growth at the moment, which is in the north of Lima. And we studied the different systems of how people live, how the landscape developed, what are the different drivers, And we did a summer school on a study area that we identified because we found it quite interesting that the process of transformation is really fast here, with the rest of agricultural land being built on, and also the different water sources that could be studied in a very small area, very close to each other, looking at the systems of the river water, which is of course the source also of the drinking water and the source of the irrigation water that is going through these channels into the agricultural land, which then is being consumed and becoming grey water and also wastewater. And there was a spring which was coming from the groundwater. And we had different teams of students studying these different types of water systems in relationship to how do they actually form the character of this landscape, how does it also create public spaces, how does it enable uses by the people, and how could we find strategies to look at the potentials of these different types of water, but also to link that with the way that people live and the needs of people in terms of needing water to drink, but also needing a quality of public spaces. And the students did some fieldwork and analysis. It was only a 2-week summer school, very, very short. We tried to identify the potentials of the site and also the skills of the people that also you showed. And we had some workshops with the inhabitants for them to show us places, show us also what they are wishing to have in the future. And we had teams of students from engineering together with architecture students to also think about the technical aspects of this problem, and also to really understand about the quality of the water relating to the different sources and what are the requirements in terms of the hygienic aspects. And what we wanted to do was to initiate a debate and also to put this site into the minds of people by already, when starting the pilot project. It's of course a long process to develop it in such a comprehensive way that you are showing, but this place was not even on the agenda of the decision makers. They had no projects in the north of Lima. So we thought for the summer school we want to use the opportunity to already, even if we have only 2 weeks, of course we cannot understand everything, but we want to have the final presentation of the project of the summer school not in the university, but bring everybody out there to follow the presentation, and also to realize a very small project together with the inhabitants that shows at least what we are talking about and shows the potential of what could be done on a large scale, and that also changes the way that people think about these systems. And one of the groups, they worked with the inhabitants of this hill, and of course there was no greening because the water is so expensive, and the students realized that the people, after they have done the washing and after they have cleaned the food for cooking, they just throw the water out to the street because they feel there's so much dust, and this kind of makes the dust settle. But actually it also doesn't help because it's so limited that it makes no real change. And so the students discussed with the people of what could be done to make, even although it's such a limited resource, this grey water that they just throw to the street, how that could be used to, on the one hand, to collect the solids from the water, from washing in a small sieve, then have a very simple filter system within this box here, and then, because these people here are working as recyclers, and there are a lot of bottles around, a lot of plastic bottles, to build very simple systems of pipes that could lead the water to a system of trees that they planted together with the inhabitants. And the nice thing about that was that these pipes, they were not something only underground that is taken for granted that there should be a pipe system, but they became part of the design feature that the people felt really proud about, and they felt it's like a kind of border between the public space, between the street, and creating a small front yard for their houses where they also have a tree that they can nurture. And it was a final presentation together with the students and the inhabitants explaining about the use of these systems and the potential of how they could be developed in the future. And so we are now trying to catch up on this and to think about these different springs of water. So we called it, there should be a park developed here, which is the park of the different springs of water, and how to deal with these in order to create different landscape systems that make use of the potential, like I showed from the Wadi, to think of a different type of river park, which does not use any irrigation like this park that they are building there at the moment, but that uses the change of water level and creates a park which is actually connected with the bed of the river, and also creates the part of the park that's related to the water purification itself, that can be combined with a productive way of using the landscape by incorporating agriculture and, of course, recreation into the landscape. And so now, from this very small scale, the very small pilot, which was only a 1-week exercise, to move to the large scale of thinking of this integrated planning for the whole Lower Cheong watershed, and integrate that also with the regional strategy of thinking of the water cycles on a much larger scale. And to finish, also when I saw your work packages, and I was a bit disappointed being a landscape architect, that landscape architecture is like these 2 points, and then there's another point which is ecosystems and infrastructure. Because me, as a landscape architect, for me, this integration is really what I am working with, and I would feel really limited only working in the landscape package, understanding it as not being integrated with these infrastructure systems, that for me really are about the interaction of the natural ecosystems, of the power of these systems that also have some ecosystem function in terms of cleaning water, and make use of these by integrating them into technical systems, and make all of these to become an environment that people like to live in, and that they also find that it's beautiful, it's a public space, it's something for inhabiting, and not something to just think of it's technical, let's put it under the ground or let's remove it from the city. So this, for me, is the approach of landscape architecture, how to also incorporate this resilience concept, the ability of productive ecosystems back into the city. Thank you.
Other questions to what has been just presented right now? Yes, please. In the center. Microphone is coming. The gentleman right there in the third, fourth row.
I was saying hello to someone. I was saying hello to someone. Sorry.
Oh.
I can ask a question if you want.
Yes.
Maybe something that I thought about before, and now Antjes commented at the end that there is a landscape in 2 packages and there is an ecosystem in other packages, and maybe from my point of view that was my initial concern, that these work packages are clearly defined to disciplines. And I think most of the problems that we're having, whether it's in practice, academia, or wherever, may be related to professional competition. Each profession tries to widen and first to define this territory and then expand on other territory and name it, whatever. And that cannot at all result in any comprehensive solution, any sustainable solutions. That will only result in personal interest being fulfilled, partially, temporarily, but that will result definitely for failures of so many attempts and examples. I think the solution that Antia has shown is hands-on, very suitable for the kind of environment. I like also the one in Wadi Hanina because I was designing for that for 2 years. But at that time there was no landscape architect, and I was wondering how it developed. I knew that there was a German company, and now I'm very happy to see how they dealt with it, because there was a very sensitive culture aspect when it comes to how the foreign landscape architect will deal with Saudi culture when it comes to the use of urban public space, because that's quite a sensitive, a culturally sensitive aspect. But I think they dealt with it quite cleverly. But coming back to my main concern, I think unless professionals understood that the value is not in competing, but the value is in cooperating, and the teamwork, the benefits from teamwork on the overall and on the personal are really much higher than the immediate personal benefits. I think we are definitely and inevitably in virtual circles of an attempt after an attempt and a failure after a failure. Only by integration and teamwork, it's a teamwork thing, and without that I think it's difficult. I don't know if we can take also, no, that we have a conclusion session at the end, so I'll keep that for the conclusion session.
Keep that, but I'm very glad you picked it up, because it's not only a problem on the level of the professionals, different professionals. It's a problem that is going through all the way from top to bottom. You take a government, it has a dozen or 15 ministries. And normally it's very, very difficult to get information going between one ministry and the other. Take the city level, you have departments, and very, very often we find that one department does not know what the other department is doing. And with professionals it's the same thing. We have competition where we should have cooperation. And to try and change that kind of approach, that is one of the most difficult things to achieve, I think. Until.
Yeah, I also think that's really the critical thing. Also to really work in the beginning, not in terms of like landscape architecture is everything, of course it's not. And it's good to, from the landscape perspective, being able to integrate these different issues. Whereas, of course, the other disciplines also need to integrate the landscape and not just leave that to like, oh, this is just the designer who gets in the end to put something green around it, which is often the position that landscape architects are put in, as they are gardeners who in the end just make something nice around what's being decided before. So it's not a matter of yet taking over from the professional point of view, like, oh, we take the lead, but on the really think about the links between the different work packages and how they integrate also during the development of the project.
All right. I think there are no further questions, and we have another hour. Yes, there is one. Because we are 15 minutes late now, but I think coffee can wait, and we'll be back in time. Yes, please.
Hello, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
First of all, thank you for the interesting presentation. I have a question. Actually, you touching the issue for the water and recycling, and also the river, how we can deal with. The problem is, most of the time, I mean, we have the river inside the city, and we don't have a place for this, let's say, wetlands around, for the buffer of the river. So how we can deal with this kind of issue? Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're mentioning an important point, because especially architects and urban designers, when you think of integrating a river into the city, it's always the urban perspective. But what's really important is to connect this perspective with the watershed perspective, to link different measures on different scales. Because this, of course, the purification and these kind of wetlands, they cannot be in the middle of the city. There really is no space for that. But if you think of what's happening upstream, and also if you take a decision of where and when big infrastructure investments are being done, like building new treatment plants, to link that already with the thinking of how could that contribute, even although the measure is in a very different place, to being able to integrate that with a design that can connect an area which is an agricultural land, which people also in Lima, they don't think of this as a park. This for them is not following the idea of what they think is a park. And also we debated a lot about the term of green infrastructure, which also you used in the introduction, because they always felt it must be something green. So we changed that to ecological infrastructure in the end, the term. And then it enables different designs also for where there's limited space. Because if in another area you already managed to improve the water quality and also to ensure that even in the dry time there's at least a minimal flow in the river, this gives you very new design opportunities even in the city where there's very little space. And even if you think of a small measure for an inner city thing, to connect that to thinking of the watershed and work with the people who are working on that level of scale to really find integrated solutions. Otherwise it can only be, oh, we are limited, we can't do anything, it's too narrow, oh, let's leave it.
Okay, thank you very much, and enjoy your coffee break. And I cannot speak for the promoters here, but I guess if we are back towards 1700 hours for the conclusion, it would be all right. So enjoy your coffee.
كنا نروح بالسيارة من المطار للبيت 3 ساعات وبعدين انتهينا هنا ساعتين 5 ساعات. لا بس كنت حابب شوية. نظرتك في المكان إنه كيف تبحث عن ذكاء المكان؟ هذا هو الأساس. بس هذه كل قضية معنا.
طب شايف حضرتك الفرق بين حضرتك حسن فتحي يعني فكرة حسن فتحي قريب من فكرة كتير يعني.
لا حسن فتحي كمان في الموضوع يمكن هو حتى تغذر في قضية هذا السكن من خلال المقومات الموجودة يعني هذا هو قاعد ممكن تستبدع لا يعني تبحث عن المقلمة هذا هو موجود وتبدأ فيه يكون عندك منطقة التكوين منطقة ويا ريت البناء نفسه منطقة البناء هو أدى إلى شكل مش إنه تعمل شكل عشان تعمل هذا نظام إنشائي إبداعي أنتج ما يسمى كل بدنا نعمله الفلاح المصري السعيد لازم الشروط مصري يعمل عنده مواد يعني هون أنا اعتبرت مبدع أنا يمكن اتجاهي يختلف أنا لأني دخلت في عدة طبقات على مستوى يمكن تنوع السياسي تنوع الفكري تنوع الأصول يعني السعودية نحكي عن المغرب تتعامل مع ثقافات متفاوتة في منها شيء مشترك في منها شيء مختلف كليا أنا هذا البحث هذا المختلف أنا دائما كنت أقول يعني ممكن أن الأصول الفلسطينية لاجئ أنا عشائري ولا قبلي ولا أسير أعتبر حالي المكان الذي أنا فيه هو مكاني أنا أكون برياض كل هذا مكاني أكون المغرب لكن العالم العربي كله هو مكاني أنا مش جايب أنا معي نموذج تشكيلي أو نتج حضرنا وحضارات أخرى مع بعض لا أنا أحاول إني أفهم المكان أفهم سر المكان ومن أقل لغته الذي يفهمها سكان هذا المكان حتى يكون في تعالي مني عليه أن نعيش في حالة تعالي حكمة عن ساحة لبعض المكان بالثمانينات قبل الإياها مثال لطيف طبعا تغيرت العالم العالم خرب بالسلوك العالم الغربي حتى يفسد يعني صاروا زي مسيح زي دول الآلف لا يقرب الإنسان الأمر مش كده.
First, the conclusion it says on the itinerary, which means that we should try to wrap up what we have heard today and what we have discussed today, and I guess it would be proper to start sort of chronologically how we have and seen the day pass in front of us today. Now, of course, the ministers and the president of the university, the representatives of the AAD and of GEIZ are not here anymore. They had some very important things to say to us, and we have picked up, of course, a number of items that they had touched in their speech as well. instance, it was quite interesting for me as well to hear that there are 5 areas of involvement for the DAAD master's program, such as this between Stuttgart and Johnson University. And I think it's a very, very good approach to have this intercultural exchange as well. I think it helps on both sides. Then, of course, the very first lecture that we have heard had been this morning by Professor Dr. Marwa Debaye this morning. Now, on the table now is Mrs. Marwa Ali. And I asked her which is the right name. She said both are right. So I guess we should discuss a little bit first insight that you gave us to Western Desert Egyptian vernacular architecture. And the big problem there, of course, is are the existing structures, the city of Alat that she had, that she had introduced this morning, is that still in a way that it could be used fully today, or what would be the adaptation that is necessary for it to be built again? And in particular, what were the advantages that this kind of settlement and structure, architecture and urban structure had as far as climate is concerned? You mentioned that this morning very definitely. And that, of course, would mean less energy consumption, for instance, one of the big topics that we have today. But on the other hand, if I remember correctly, you said that there were 6,500 inhabitants at one time, and now there are 150 people left. So actually the existing structures are not even used, even so they have a very great appeal to us, and we regard them as being of high cultural and architectural value in their defined type of architecture that they present, with mud brick building and things more. So would you want to reflect briefly on it again, Marwa, and then perhaps we can get some reaction from the floor as well?